Okay, Bubbleverse 9. Warming up. On 1. This chapter beta. Read by Lady Columbine of Mistal.Oron, de Bubbler Homeworld. Is known as Fazareep, so Tanarak refer to bubblers singular, plural, and possessive as Fazareepi N3. The Tanarak, the temperature range they can live in. Bubblers and the other concordat species, 0-20 Kelvin, are cold zoners. Tanarak, 20-50 Kelvin, are warm zoners. Any theoretical species that could live in the 50-100 Kelvin range would be hot zoners, and species such as humans, who treat oxygen and nitrogen as gases and water as a liquid, are hell zoners. It had never been easy to be a Tanarak, and thus a member of the most illustrious species that had ever graced the cosmos. Masculine progenitor, now the equal above all of all Tanarak, had explained this many times. Tanarak had to be strong in victory, unrelenting in conquest, and wise in rulership. It was their progenitors' granted destiny, which meant any lesser beings attempting to prevent such a thing from coming to pass were to be punished with all due force. So it had been for time immemorial, and so it would be for the rest of eternity. Or so the Tanarak had believed, until about 15 standard stellar cycles ago. That was when their stealth scout ships had finally uncovered the location of Fazareep, the homeworld of the tentacled cold zoners with the unpronounceable species name. They were wise in the sciences, to the point that their ships were much faster than equivalent Tanarak vessels. Conquering their Fazareepi and co-opting their scientists toward improving the capabilities of Tanarak warships would be a good and efficient use. After all, what use was an unconquered species if they were not working toward the betterment of Tanarak? Pograk had been barely a hatchling by then, but the story of what happened next was known by all Tanarak. When the glorious liberation fleet neared the Fazareep system, they were hailed by Fazareepi ships and ordered to reverse course. The Commander Prime Ultra, the previous Tanarak leader, had ignored the babblings of the lesser creatures and continued onward. That was when another hail came in, conveyed via what turned out to be a faster-than-light communications link from the surface of a distant planet. Through this link, the Commander Prime Ultra's crew and all Tanarak were introduced to humans, embodied in the deceptively slender, then Ensign Serena Hernandez. The commander's initial contempt had turned to trepidation when it was revealed that she was a hell zoner who poured molten magma over her brain case to cool it down, and to outright fear when the Fazareepi explained they'd freely given humans access to their FTL technology. What followed after that was the most terrifying message the Tanarak species had ever received. We have a little saying here on Earth Key. Fuck around and find out, door. If you think you're tough enough, come right ahead. We will stand by our allies, and we will kick your asses. Your Colleen. For many other species, it would have been dismissed as mere noisemaking. Nobody was a more martial species than the Tanarak. No cold zone species could survive in the temperatures they could, and few could withstand their weapons. Humans, apparently, just as martially inclined as the Tanarak, survived and even thrive in temperatures where dihydrogen monoxide was a liquid, where the terrifying glare of their stellar primary cast a distinct shadow that bespoke a hilariously ridiculous level of resistance to energy weapons. But none of the Tanarak were left. The threat, spoken with force and intent, had been enough to cause the Commander Prime Ultra to give orders to return to Tanarak space. He had later repented of his initial reaction and sought to drive a wedge between the human and Fazreep factions by dispatching a team to assassinate Serena Hernandez on her first visit to Fazreep. The attacking party never reported back, but the Fazreep had returned a few mostly destroyed remains, with the explanation that Lieutenant Hernandez had single-handedly destroyed the raiding team Yaz, well as the mountain they were hiding behind. The subtext, clear even to the Tanarak, was the next time we'll send Hair to speak to you. The Commander Prime Ultra should have left well enough alone. But he had not clawed his way to that level of power without a certain level of bloody-mindedness, and he was in the middle of planning another attack when Pograk's progenitor led the coup that toppled the current Tanarak regime and installed a much more moderate one. So moderate, in fact, that it bordered on near heretical levels of pacifism. The equal, above all, when, cautiously, queried on this, had explained matters quite succinctly. Up until the humans arrived on the scene, Tanarak had been able to stomp where they liked, and the cold zoners had been obliged to allow them to do just that. But the humans were able to stomp a lot harder, and showed a ready willingness to do so, especially in defense of their allies, the Fazreep. As such, the humans, utterly unstoppable, and the Fazreep, equally unstoppable by proxy, were only powers in the galaxy. In order to regain some of their previous stomping ability, the Tanarak were going to have to do something they'd never done before. They needed to offer alliance with their Fazreep. Once accepted, they could then offer alliance with the humans, who were rumored to be able to work all kinds of high-temperature materials, up to and including, though it was probably a cruel jest, iron. Once again, Tanarak ships approached the Fazreep system, but this time they shut down their drives and waited, transmitting a radio beacon. When Fazreep vessels came out to investigate, the Tanarak ships cut loose transport modules containing entire shiploads of minerals. The Fazreep found valuable. With a curt message that the minerals were an offer of alliance, the Tanarak ships had departed. It had worked after a fashion. Somewhat bemused, the Fazreep accepted the minerals and the offer of alliance, which led to the next step, ally with humans. It had been discovered, through careful scanning of Fazreep communications, that there was a Fazreep child on Earth, the human planet. She was no doubt being held separate from the rest of her kind to ensure the cooperation of the Fazreep working with human scientists. It was a very Tanarak tactic. They had done much the same in centuries gone by. If the Tanarak were to gain the same level of ingratiation, the equal above all had decided, they would have to do the same, only with a higher-ranking host. And that was where Pograk came. "You're not too hot," asked Suika, perambulating over the ice in her decorated tentacle socks, with a protective outer covering to repel the weak sunlight. Pograk, on the other hand, was in his element. The Tanarak guard was carrying his coat, while the pair explored the upper surface of Triton. "I feel no discomfort," Pograk replied. "Tanarak are hardier than Fez Reapy. This, you should know that. But why are your tentacle socks so colorful?" Thwika took a moment to extend one of her motive tentacles and admire the images that had been woven into the design. "I don't know whose idea it was, but some of the humans saw us with ordinary socks and gave us the decorated ones. I was given this set when I got here. They're very pretty, aren't they?" Pograk wasn't sure if he was supposed to admire pretty things. He'd always been taught that the physical beauty of an object was immaterial next to its utility. "I would not know. I do not require such things." She responded with a tentacle flip that indicated, as far as he understood Fazarapi body language, mild exasperation. "Wow, haven't you ever wanted to do something just for fun? Or does your dad keep you locked in a box until he needs to bring you out to show people that you exist?" "My progenitor does not keep me imprisoned," he protested. "I have a fulfilling life. He has been teaching me the important aspects of Tanarak society." Before Thwika could reply, Pograk's progenitor spoke over his minicom unit. "Return to the ship at once. It is time to leave." "Yes, sir, father," he replied. At the same time, he saw Thwika responding to her own comm unit, and the guards doing the same. They all turned and moved back toward the hole that had been sunk into the icy surface of Triton to create the spaceport. It was a very well-constructed base, and he had enjoyed the sojourn on the surface, even if Thwika would insist on asking strange and awkward questions. Locked into a box until he was needed, indeed. What other fancies did she entertain within her brain case? As they descended the staircase into the base proper, he accepted the coat from the Tanarak guard and put it back on again to ward against the chill. At the same time, Thwika removed her reflective garb and passed it to her guard. She kept the tentacle socks on, though. His father did not ask if he was ready to go. It wouldn't have mattered if he wasn't. Thwika, on the other hand, spent a few moments hugging several Feziripi and suit-clad humans who had come out to see them leave. Likewise, Lieutenant Hernandez shook a few hands and clasped a few tentacles before boarding the ship herself. The last one on board was Saduk, Thwika's progenitor. Pograk had not yet had the chance to speak with him, and wasn't sure if he wanted to. Saduk was an impressive sight, even for a Fazarepi, with heat scarring over part of his dermis and two well-articulated artificial tentacles. These injuries had been incurred during the Commander Prime Ultra's abortive assassination mission, Pograk knew. His survival had elevated him to near-mythical status among his fellow Fasiri Pipi. Humans respected him too, apparently, despite the fact that he was a mere astrogator. "Okay," Lieutenant Hernandez said once the outer hatch had closed, dusting her hands off as though she'd just completed a difficult task. "Earth's about 4 light hours away, but we'll be taking it easy on this hop. Atia will be in 1 hour's time. Bubblers and Tanarak will be suiting up, because we'll be bringing all areas of the ship up to near human standard temperatures, except for essential emergency locations." She turned to look at Pograk and his progenitor. "You've practiced with the mock-ups we sent of your suits." "We have them on," And they fit, the equal above all conceded. But where are my guards? Why are they not accompanying me to Earth? First off, trying on is not the same as practice. Lieutenant Hernandez, despite being a human, managed to hit the same chiding note that Pograk's tutors had when he was delinquent in his lessons. Second, we've produced exactly 2 Tanorak heat suits, just as we have 2 Bubbler heat suits. When we warm the ship up, your guards would be as useless as, well, as one of your heat guns on the surface of Earth. Besides, we left the Bubbler guards behind too. And you're making the effort to be nice, so we're all friends here. We willing guard you. And we willing keep you and your son alive to the very best of our ability. Understood? Come on, Thwika, Saduk said to his daughter. Let's get suited up. You're going to have to take those socks off, though. I know, she sighed. I just like wearing them. With a parting tentacle wave to Pograk, she followed her progenitor off into the depths of the ship. Pograk couldn't imagine speaking back to his father like that. Until he'd met Lieutenant Hernandez, he wouldn't have imagined that anyone would take the equal above all to task like that, either. Yet, it had happened. He hesitated, knowing that it was probably best to follow the example of the 2 Fazaripi, but not wanting to act against his progenitor's wishes. Understood, the equal above all, said stiffly. Come along, Pograk. If we must wear these heat suits, then we must wear them. They did not speak as Pograk's progenitor led the way back to the cabin they had shared on the outbound journey. Sure enough, where the mock-ups had been, genuine heat suits now hung on racks, ready to be donned. Pograk had put his mock-up on once, and was reasonably sure that he knew how it was done. His guard had assisted him at the time, so he was slower this time around. Finally, however, it beeped its approval. He was sealed in, ready to withstand any hellish temperatures he might encounter. His progenitor, however, was still struggling with his, muttering under his breath. Pograk watched, suspecting that he knew what the problem was, but unsure if he should offer his advice. After all, he was the lowly, in no way qualified to give direction to the equal above all. The cabin door buzzed, then an intercom cut in. It was Lieutenant Hernandez's voice. We're about ready to start warming the ship, but I'm reading a suit problem in your quarters. The suit you gave me is malfunctioning, snapped the equal above all. It will not seal properly. Are you sure? The human's tone sounded dubious. Wei tested them extensively. It should be fully functional. Well, it is not. The equal above all tried to achieve the sealing sequence again, to no avail. I'm coming in. It wasn't a request. It was a statement. I'm kind of an expert on suit malfunctions, having survived one myself. True to her word, the hatch slid open a moment later, and she entered. Let's see now. The equal above all looked as though he wanted to order her to leave him alone. But even Pograk knew that would be a futile exercise. And if she obeyed, the equal above all would be confined to an emergency area for the entirety of the flight. So, he suffered her to examine the suit. Ah, I got it, she said, an embarrassingly short time later. You didn't set this up here. Let me just quick override, reset. Oh, and there we go. That should seal properly now. Moments later, the cheerful beep indicated that it was done. Pograk was impressed, despite himself. He'd been basically correct as far as he could tell, but she'd corrected the problem faster than he would have been able to explain it. Before he could say anything, she'd done a quick visual inspection of his own suit and nodded approvingly. Well, you did yours okay. Tilting her head, she pursed her mobile lips. Why didn't you help your dad with his? Caught on the spot, he struggled for an answer. It was not my place to. A slice of her hand cut off his excuse. Rule number 1 in this business, kiddo. If someone needs help, you help. Doesn't matter if you're an ensign and they're an admiral, if you've got know-how that they need, you offer. She turned to the equal above all. Rule number 2. If you're stuck, never be too proud to ask for or accept help, even from someone of lower rank. That is not the Tanarak way, the equal above all stated, drawing himself up. Weakness is to be exploited, and showing weakness is fatal. She gave him a long look. So, how's that working out for you? Without giving him the chance to respond, she turned toward the hatch. They're warming the ship. You need to come out, just to make sure that your suits are working okay. Waiting just long enough, in Pograk's opinion, to make it clear that he was not following her orders. The equal above all followed her out. Pograk went as well. He didn't want to find out the hard way that his heat suit wasn't working, after all. The warming of the ship proceeded without incident. Twika and Saduk emerged from their quarters, wearing their own heat suits. Twika also had with her a flat square box. She came straight over to Pograk, where he stood at his progenitor's side, and said, "Excuse me. Do you mind if I steal your son for a while?" Realizing he was being addressed, the equal above all looked suspiciously at her. "What do you need my offspring for? Are you intending to play some childish prank upon him?" She twisted her tentacles in confusion, sparkling lights illuminating her dermis from within. "No, don't. Why would I do that? I wanted to pass the time by teaching him how to play chess. It's a human strategy game, and it's a lot of fun." Strategy. The equal above all looked at the box. What does a child, a Ifazaripai child, know of strategy? Her tentacles stilled, and she stared back at him fearlessly. "Why don't you show me how to play it properly, then?" Off to the side, Pograk saw Saduk about to move forward, then restrained by Lieutenant Hernandez. He was too far away to hear what she said to him, but he decided that she'd explained how it was not a good idea to anger the equal above all over such a small thing. "Perhaps I will. How is this chess played?" Pograk, and thus his progenitor, came from a long line of Tanarak warriors. Strategy was virtually ingrained in their bloodline. Surely there would be little difficulty in teaching Thwika the error of her ways. "Here, I'll show you." Thwika acquired a small table and opened the box to show a board with black and white squares. Moving quickly, her tentacles set up the pieces in their appropriate squares. And they moved like this, one piece at a time, she demonstrated their movement capabilities. It was simple enough, Pograk decided. The odd piece with the animal head was a little puzzling, but surely it would not be problematic with the game as a while. And to win the game, one must pin the opposing ruler so that he cannot be rescued. I understand. The equal above all waved a magnanimous paw. You may begin first. Thwicca began play cautiously, no doubt intimidated by the age and experience of her opponent. The equal above all, on the other paw, pushed aggressively from the beginning. But no matter how he tried, he couldn't quite force a victory, despite seeming to have the advantage. And then, when he was but one move from putting her in checkmate, the game had strange terms attached. She moved a piece which had sat quiescent for the whole game. Check, she said clearly. What? The equal above all scanned the board. Oh. He moved a piece. But she captured it. Check. The subdermal lights were almost constant by now. What? What? This time, Pograk saw it first. There, father. Her bishop. Oh. Well, no matter. He moved his king. She captured another piece. Check. That was when, as his progenitor scanned the board, Pograk suddenly saw it. Every move the equal above all could make had a counter. She had spent the whole game setting a trap around him, and now she was springing it. One piece at a time. There. Now, check. Very well, I check. How are you doing this? Just lucky, I suppose. Check. You cannot keep this up forever. That's true. Checkmate. He glared at the pieces, as if he were able to change the situation by sheer willpower. But even Pograk could see there was no way out. That was a good game, Thwicca said. Thank you. I learned a lot. Attention, everyone, the intercom announced. This is your captain speaking. We will be arriving at Fazireep Field in T-minus 5 minutes. Local time will be 0900 hours, and weather will be a gentle breeze from the northwest with some high cirrus clouds. For our cryobiological passengers, the temperature will be a balmy 293 Kelvin, so please take care to keep your heat suits on. Please take your seats and ensure your tray tables are in an upright and locked position. Thank you for flying Triton Spaceways, and be sure to have an amazing... Well, that's us, Lieutenant Hernandez said briskly. You all heard the captain. Let's get secured. As she leaned over to assist Thwicca with putting the chess pieces away, Pograk saw her hand down at her side in an odd configuration, palm up. A moment later, Thwicca surreptitiously slapped it with one of her spare tentacles. It took him a few more seconds before he realized what the gesture meant. She knew Thwicca would win, and congratulated her for doing it. In Pograk's world, that didn't happen. A youth who embarrassed an elder like that was disciplined for reaching above their station. Yet Lieutenant Hernandez had praised Thwicca. Being that too. Sure, Still, draw, on. As he went to his seat, he had a lot to think about. What else are the Fazaripi learning from the human? Okay,